The Roommate. Coming home. It was Friday night, around midnight, when Carla returned home to her apartment. She was grateful for her secured entry apartment building as she heard two drunks arguing as they walked down the street. A hazard of living in the city, she knew. She closed and locked her door behind her. Her huge tabby cat, Coco, came around the corner meowing loudly. He rubbed against her legs and purred. "Hi, Coco." Carla scooped him up and nuzzled her face into his furry body. She loved hearing his purring loud in her ear. He squirmed, and Carla let him jump down, landing silently on his feet. All right. I know I'm late, and that means dinner is too," Carla said. She walked into the kitchen and retrieved the cat food from the one cupboard the cat could not open. She dropped 2 scoops of dry food into Coco's bowl and replaced the food back in the cupboard. After checking the cat's water, she wandered into the living room to sit down and gather her thoughts. She had closed this evening at the coffee shop she worked at, and it had been hectic. A group of kids were playing an RPG, and she had to kick them out at closing. There had been much groaning and complaining. Carla reached toward the coffee table to flip on the TV for a little while, but the remote was not where it was supposed to be. She spied it, laying on the floor a little ways off. She sighed. "Come on, Coco. Just because I'm late doesn't mean you can knock stuff around." The cat continued eating. Carla smiled and retrieved the remote. She kicked off her shoes and placed her feet on the coffee table. Living alone was a dream come true for Carla. She was an only child, so college had been a tough time for her. Things she found soothing, like ticking clocks and furry cats, her roommates had hated. But she graduated 2 years ago and was glad to be living alone. Even if her apartment was tiny, she could decorate as she pleased and have as many cats and ticking clocks as she wanted. Carla stretched and yawned. She decided against turning on the television and made her way to the bathroom to take a shower. Waking up. Carla had gone to bed after her shower. She read a book for a few minutes, but her eyelids were heavy and the ticking of her bedroom clock made her drowsy. She didn't know what time she woke up. The silence had woken her. She slowly opened her eyes and looked at the small alarm clock on her bedside table. The hands glowed steadily, but didn't move. "What?" she asked. She reached over, upsetting Coco, who had been sleeping next to her. She flicked on the lamp. The batteries from her clock sat next to it. "What?" she said again. She sat up completely and looked around her room. The window was closed. She took a deep breath and looked under her bed. There was nothing but a couple suitcases. Sighing, Carla picked up her clock and put the batteries back in. "I must have taken them out in my sleep," she said to Coco, who was staring at the linen closet by the bathroom in the short hallway. "Coco, come on. Don't freak me out." Coco chirruped like he did at birds that landed on the trees outside the windows. Carla got out of bed and muttered, "Stupid cat." She flicked on the hall light and opened the linen closet before she could think about it. Her small collection of 1 extra towel and 1 extra set of bed sheets sat on the 2 shelves. Other than that, there was nothing inside. Coco had wandered into the closet and sniffed at the corner. "Come on, stupid," she said. "Let's go back to bed." Carla had her clock in hand. She walked into the kitchen to set her clock in sync with the microwave. It was 4 a.m. She climbed back into bed. Coco eventually jumped back onto the bed too. His purring and the steady ticking put her to sleep quickly. Saturday morning. The sun shone brightly through the curtains of Carla's bedroom. It floated over her face and slowly woke her up. She stretched and felt the cat jump to the floor. "Good morning, Coco," she said. The cat yawned and blinked slowly at her. She shuffled into the kitchen and started to make her morning coffee. Weirdly, her 1-cup pour-over coffee maker was shifted from one side of the sink to the other. That's weird. I must have moved it," she muttered. She grabbed it and placed it on top of her mug. As she waited for her water to boil, she went into the living room and flipped on the TV to the morning news. "Breaking into people's home and hiding. Officials still are not certain to the extent that this is taking place. Back to you in the studio, Maria." The camera cut to the anchorwoman. Wow, creepy stuff, Dawn. We'll keep you all informed as we find out more. And now to Jacqueline with the weather. The camera cut to the weather report, and Carla shivered. Ugh, I'm glad I live in an apartment. Nothing like that could happen here, she said. Suddenly, there was a crash from the bathroom. Carla jumped. She walked carefully to the bathroom and peeked inside. Coco sat on the floor, staring at the bathtub with the curtain drawn. Carla took a deep breath and walked carefully to the curtain and pulled it back. Her shampoo and razor were on the floor of the tub. Geez, that report must have got me worked up. She turned to the cat. What are you up to, silly kitty? I thought you hated the tub. Carla bent and replaced her strewn shower supplies. Stop freaking me out. She scratched Coco's head and went to attend the whistling kettle. Saturday afternoon. Carla went for a run. It was her day off, and it was beautiful outside. After she had finished her coffee and modest breakfast, she donned her running clothes. She ran in her neighborhood and tried not to think about the creepy news report she'd seen earlier. It wouldn't happen to her, she reasoned to herself. She lived in a nice area of the city in a secured entry apartment building. Her neighbors were diligent about not letting people in. You couldn't even use the elevator without the right key fob. She was a smart woman who had lived in the city for years. She knew the areas to avoid and carried a taser with her whenever she went out alone. Why, she even had it now, tucked into a small pocket of her running shorts. She always made sure her running shorts had pockets for that very reason. Carla shook her head and chuckled to herself. How silly she was being. It was probably because she'd had a weird night. She pushed the thoughts out of her mind and focused on the upbeat running music pumping in her ears. Carla slowed as she reached her building. She did a few stretches, then entered the lobby. She couldn't wait to get upstairs and guzzle some water. In her apartment, she found the water pitcher and a glass out on the counter where she'd left them before leaving. Ah, perfect, she said. She had just begun to pour herself a glass when she noticed the quiet sound of the TV from the living room. What the hell? Carla set down her glass and went into the living room. It was on the same channel she'd been watching this morning. A TV talk show was on, something Carla would never watch. I didn't leave this on, did I? Carla said. She glanced at the sofa. The pillows were rumpled, and the cat sat purring near them. Didn't I fix those up before I left? Carla went to the couch and felt the rumpled area. It was warm. Carla felt the blood drain from her face. Coco meowed loudly. Carla straightened up quickly and swallowed hard, even though her throat was dry. It was you, she said to Coco. You were sitting there just a moment ago, weren't you? She laughed loudly in an attempt to calm herself. Stupid freaking news report, she muttered as she went back to the kitchen, ignoring the fact that there was no cat hair on the pillows. Saturday evening. That evening, Carla had friends over for dinner. She made a curry recipe she'd learned from her mother years ago. It was a recipe she'd made so much she had it perfected and almost memorized. Her friends arrived with wine, dessert, and an after-dinner card game. They ate well, drank a lot, and felt like horrible, hilarious people while they played cards. They didn't leave until the early hours of the morning. Carla called them a cab, and they left with promises to do it again soon. Carla closed the door smiling, her head buzzing from the wine. She hated to leave a dirty kitchen, so she set to work getting the dishes clean and put away. As she worked, she thought she saw something out the corner of her eye, a movement of some kind. She looked up quickly, but there was nothing there. She shook her head, which made it spin for a moment. A glass of water or 12 would do her good. She pulled out a clean glass and the water pitcher. She gulped down 2 big glasses of water and resolved to take a couple of Advils before bed. Gotta beat the hangover, she said. There was a chuckle. It was unmistakable. Who is that? Carla was on high alert. She looked around her tiny apartment. No one in the living room, no one in the kitchen with her, no one in the hall but the cat, staring at the linen closet. She picked up her cell phone and dialed the friends that had just left. Hey, Carla, one of them drunkenly slurred. We just got home. What did we forget? Nothing. I think someone is in my apartment, she whispered. There was a slight pause, and she could hear them conversing in the background. I don't think that could be possible. We were just there. No one was there, her friend said. Are you okay? Want one of us to head back over? Carla suddenly felt silly, drunk, and embarrassed. Of course there was no one in her house. She was hearing things. No, she laughed a little. You're right. There's no way someone could be in my house. It's silly. I'm just drunk and tired. That news report I saw must be getting the best of me. All right, well, if you're freaked, you and Coco could come here. You'd have to bunk with one of us, roommate style, her friend offered. No, it's okay. I'll be all right. I was overreacting, Carla said. She said goodbye and hung up her phone. She poured herself another glass of water and went to the bathroom to take her Advil. Very early Sunday morning. There was no ticking, but there was a knocking noise. Carla blearily opened her eyes. Her head pounded and her stomach was in unpleasant squishing knots. She groaned as her eyes adjusted to the darkness. Her bedside clock batteries were out and next to the clock again. Come on, what the actual fuck, she muttered to herself. She noticed Coco was not on the bed with her. Coco, where are you, sweetie? There was no reply. Carla dragged herself to sitting position and leaned against her headboard. She replaced the clock batteries and retrieved her phone from the bedside table to check the time. It was 4 a.m. She had gone to bed only an hour and a half ago. Who's fucking with my clock? She wondered aloud. And where's my cat? She got out of bed and walked into the short hall, her hand sliding along the wall to keep her upright. She couldn't decide if she was still drunk or hungover. She suddenly noticed a strip of light in the hallway. The linen closet door was open a crack. Her heart beat rapidly, and suddenly she didn't feel drunk or tired. She never left the linen closet open, and what's more, she heard the low growl of Coco. Coco was the friendliest kitty she'd ever met. He'd never growled at anyone before. She opened the linen closet door and found the cat spitting and hissing. The back wall of the closet was opened inward, and she could see beyond it into the wall. Among the insulation was a lamp and blankets. Blankets she'd thought she'd lost during her college moves. Carla slammed the door and ran out of her front door to her neighbor's apartment, where she called the police. Early Sunday morning. The police had come quickly, within 5 minutes. They searched her apartment and found nothing. Carla showed them the linen closet and cringed when they opened it, but they found no doorway or opening at all. It was a solid wall. They looked at her sympathetically and a bit condescendingly. Didn't she say she'd been drinking? Hadn't she just woken up after basically passing out? Wasn't she disoriented and a bit hungover? Maybe they were right. She was standing right there when they examined the wall and found nothing. No seams, no hinges, nothing but a solid, unmovable wall. One of the officers felt sorry for her and gave her his card with a direct number on the back. He said to call him if she felt unsafe or found anything pertinent. She nodded and locked the door after they left. She could hear them talking quietly in the hall. She watched them from her window, clapping the card-giving officer on the back. Now she sat stiffly on her sofa. She thought of all the little things she'd noticed. Her sliding closet doors closed so the handles were difficult to reach. The one-cup coffee pour-over, the remote, the TV on, the sofa warm and free from cat hair. She stood quickly and looked around her apartment. She thought she saw movement out the corner of her eye again, but when she turned toward it, there was nothing there. "I know you're here!" she shouted. "Just out of my line of vision, but I know you're here! Get out of my home!" There was a pounding on the walls. "Shut up!" came a muffled yell. "You've got neighbors, asshole!" Carla flushed at being called an asshole. "I'm not an asshole," she muttered. Monday morning. Carla could hear her phone ringing, but she ignored it. It had been ringing since 5 a.m., when she was 20 minutes late for her shift at the coffee shop. But she couldn't be bothered. She had work to do. No one believed that there was someone in her apartment, but she knew there was. The news reports had said that someone was breaking into people's homes. Things were out of place, and the batteries had been taken out of her clock again. Coco was obsessed with the linen closet and kept hissing at it. He'd even scratched at Carla when she tried to comfort him and take him away from it. The TV had been on again, and all of her shower things had been knocked down and strewn about the tub, too. There was someone here, and she would prove it if no one believed her. Carla had gone to the hardware store as soon as it had opened and purchased a small electrical chainsaw. Now she stood at her linen closet, door wide open, shelves removed, and chainsaw roaring. She cut the wall out of her closet. Bits of insulation flew around her, and the wall fell inward, propped against the studs of the opposite wall. Coco hid under the bed. There was nothing there. There were no blankets, no lamp, no little campout for the creeper hiding in the closet. "Well, they've got to be here somewhere. I'm not crazy," she said. She switched off the chainsaw and set it in the hallway. She went to her bedroom and pulled everything away from the walls. She pushed against the wall, ran her fingers along it looking for seams. She examined every wall in the bathroom, pushing things aside with no regard to where they landed. She ran to the kitchen and threw her pots and pans out of the cupboards, but found no hiding place. "It's here somewhere, I'm sure of it!" she shouted. There was a knock at her door, but it went ignored. "In the living room, somewhere in there." She ran to the living room. She began to push everything away from the walls. The knocking on the door became a pounding. There was yelling, but Carla could not hear or understand it. The pounding became loud crashes against the door, and it flew open suddenly, breaking Carla out of her reverie. The police came inside quickly. "Who did this?" Carla asked. "There's someone in my home. I didn't do this." She began to cry. In her hand was her small bedside clock. She held it to her ear, listening to the soothing ticking. The officer who had given her his card approached her carefully. He held out a hand. "It's all right, miss. Come with us. We'll keep you safe," he said. She nodded and walked toward him. My cat Coco. Come on, honey. He can't be here alone with that maniac. I think someone is hiding in my walls," Carla told the officer. "Okay, we'll get the cat," he began. "Coco," Carla said. "We'll get Coco. We'll get the crazy person out of your home." The officer escorted Carla out the door, down the stairs, and to his police car. He took her to the station, where her parents waited to collect her. All the while, she held her clock, the ticking clear in her ear.